Hello, welcome back to Faith Over Fear, Overcoming Addiction, episode 13.
Lucky 13.
Yeah, you can tell it's 13. I've had it with hurricanes. So we're going to be talking about PTSD tonight. And I have serious PTSD from hurricanes or tropical storms or any hint of a hurricane that's come off the horn of, what is it? The Cape of the Horn of Africa or whatever the heck it is.
I don't know.
I've had it.
It's not even a tropical storm, is it?
Yeah,
it's an
it
L
is.
or something.
No, it's a
tropical storm now.
Yep.
See, when you live in Florida, where we live, it's like,
it's because I'm doing everything.
That's so not true, first of all. But you get accustomed to the fact that we're gonna have storms and everything, and it's my personality. It's like, whatever will be. I can pray for safety and pray for
right, but
everything.
There's boats that have to be moved around, vehicles that have to be protected, all that stuff.
I offered to help you move that boat. It's a pain in the butt. It is a pain in the butt, but it's all for the safety of the house and the boat. And so anyway,
I'm about ready to leave Florida.
So there's thunderstorm going on all around us. I don't even know. No, they probably can't hear it, but we can hear it. It's all around.
Yeah, I don't think they'll be able to hear it through the mics. You might hear a little bit of rumble, and
that's going to come from
the
Brett.
show might just completely stop. And that's because we will have lost power because there's a thunderstorm going on, a fast-moving tropical storm that's going to hit us over this evening, right into tomorrow. So
if that happens, pray for our safety. But speaking
or my sanity.
Both, please. Speaking of that, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight and thank you for all the wonderful gifts that you continue to give to us. Thank you for giving us this opportunity and this platform to be able to reach as many people as possible who might be struggling with addiction or just struggling with life. If we can be a voice to those that need to hear, please allow us to resonate in their hearts. And we just thank you so much. And dear Lord, please keep us safe down here in Florida. We pray for our family and friends. And it's in your precious and perfect son's name that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So you want to talk more about the hurricane or you want to get right into PTSD?
No, let's get into PTSD. I can't wait.
All right. So backstory. So we're talking May of 2020. So I went into, first, we're going to talk about PTSD, maybe put a little bit of shame and guilt in there. If we get to it, I'm really excited if we can. I've got this awesome book. It's actually one of the books from my class, which I only have 8 more classes to go to get my BS in psychology.
Yay, that's awesome.
And so I'm a little bit behind because I took a couple of, months off because life and stuff. But anyway, I had this book before for a previous class, and I did that book buyback. And so I sent it back. And then all of a sudden I get this book again for this next class coming up, Addictive Behaviors. And I'm like, I'm glad because it's just like, I think I was meant to have the book. Mm-hmm. It's Addiction and Grace, Love and Spirituality and the Healing of Addictions by Gerald G. May, MD. So I have a couple of things in here. I haven't started my class yet, but I started reading it. And I think that this is going to really come into our podcast, if not tonight, but definitely in the next one. So PTSD, what do you think of when you think of PTSD?
I think of like in this moment right now, like honestly, I have PTSD from a couple of things. One from a family relationship, which was my first inclination of it. And honestly, like I can't handle hurricanes. They stress me out. Just thinking about them, prepping for them, all that stuff. Like I hate it. I'm to the point where I'm ready to just move out of Florida.
And you said that with the previous hurricane, Ian, right?
Yeah, and last year, because we had a little bit of a scare last year.
See, I don't even remember.
Another I name.
It wasn't Irma. Irma was before that, wasn't it?
No, Irma was in 17, but there's another one. So like where we are in Southwest Florida, we're actually in a county that had been hit by a hurricane in 1960 with Donna. Hadn't had a hurricane until 2004, August 13th of it's the 13th. No, 13th episode. August 13th of 2004 when Charlie hit. So there was 40 years in there. I'm okay with that. But then after Charlie, it's like then it was like 10 years there was a scare. And now I swear it's every
It's
year.
like every year. Yeah.
So Irma hit this not our area, immediate area that hard, but it hit the county south of us very hard. Lee County got hit hard. And the interior counties, like where Immokalee is in LaBelle, they all got hit real hard. And then all of us, both counties, in so many counties actually, because Ian was 500 miles wide. When Charlie hit, it was 50 miles. It was 5 miles wide, 5 miles wide,
Yeah.
and it was fast moving. So like when you actually saw Charlie on radar and you see it from like space and stuff, when they take those pictures, you can actually see it
little
moving.
baby hurricane.
You can see it moving across the state because it went up the Peace River and just like went all the way up, all the way out Jacksonville. But when Ian came, you couldn't even see the state of Florida,
right?
Because it was 500 miles wide and it was only moving like 5 miles an hour or less.
Yeah.
10 and a half hours of constant pounding from that hurricane. So they stressed me out because I mean, it's two households too, right? I got to make sure that my mom's stuff is okay. And I appreciate, yes, you said you can help me with the boat. What are you going to do? You're not going to do it by yourself. So I have to do that stuff. And it's a lot. I mean, we still have crap on the side of the house that I haven't had a chance to get a dumpster for. That's from Ian 2 years ago. So anyway, they stress me out, and that's the PTSD. That's what it looks like.
Example. All right. But you know what? Talking about it hopefully makes you feel a little bit better. All right. So anyway, thank you for sharing. So I had always thought of PTSD as,
something only like
ex-military
get,
and
right?
stuff.
Military, yeah.
Right. So rewind back to April, May 18th, 19. I believe I checked into the behavioral place for my detox on the 18th. Because I remember I was at Honey Lake on the 21st. So on the 18th, I go to this place and I had my first clinical assessment. It was all via Zoom because, it was COVID, 2020. And they're like, you have PTSD. And I'm like, I was never in the military.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, whatever. And they prescribed a medication for me. And this is funny how God works. I know I've mentioned it before. The next day was like my first full day in the establishment, detox center, whatever. And one of the funny rules, I found it odd, but I understand. They have classes throughout the day because really you're just in a space that has a common area and beds down a hallway, men and women in the bathrooms, all down the same hall, no locks on the door.
At the behavioral center,
at the behavioral center. Yeah. And there's really nothing to do there all day except, behave. Oh, talk to other patients. They had a television, but there was like a hierarchy there. Obviously, it's like we watched whatever, so-and-so. Can't even remember their names, but there were little like process groups. And if you go to the process group, that you get to choose your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Otherwise, you get whatever they give you. And, when I went, first of all, I like learning. I've always loved being in a class. Not always, but I was committed to try to apply myself to as many things as possible. Right. And, the food was a bonus. The first class was what I have here. It was about PTSD. And I'm like, that is when, God had started talking to me a long time before then. But I think that looking back, that was one of the first, hey, I got you. I'm going to help you through all this stuff. And it's so funny because I was sitting there and I'm like, this is great. Because again, I just thought PTSD, ex-military, I think for a Forrest Gump, Lieutenant Dan. And that might sound silly, but that was my first thought about PTSD. So anyway, what is PTSD? Well, let me tell you. This is from Seeking Safety by Lisa Najivitz, something like that. So PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder, emotional problems that can occur after someone has experienced a terrible, stressful event. So here's some questions to kind of gauge whether or not you have PTSD. And then I'll tell you the ones that apply to me. You survived a trauma, an event outside your control in which you experienced or witnessed a physical threat. Examples: sexual abuse, physical abuse, war combat, seeing someone killed, surviving a hurricane. It's in there.
That's hilarious. Wow.
A car accident.
See?
It's in there.
Not off base.
No.
And then we actually have a good friend. I don't even know if you know this story or remember it. I think you've heard it before, but it's been so long ago. But we actually have a good friend who has PTSD. It's why he has a lot of anxiety, because he watched one of his friends get shot and he stuck his finger in the hole to keep it from bleeding. He got shot in the head.
I do remember that story.
Right?
I can't remember the friend though.
Yeah, I'll tell you after.
Okay. Wow. Number 2, your response to the trauma involved intense helplessness, fear, or horror. Example, if you were a child at the time, agitated or disorganized behavior. After the trauma, you suffered each of the following problems for over a month. And gosh, I had this for a long time. Intrusion. The trauma comes back into your mind even when you don't want it to, as in nightmares, flashbacks, or images. So I think that I had mentioned this to you once before. So I had recurring night. Oh, gosh.
Recurring nightmares.
It's funny how that kind of pops up, right?
Yeah, but that's exactly what you're describing, right? Like
Yeah.
you can think you think you can talk about it, and then boom, the minute your mind goes there, everything starts getting emotional because of what it's meant.
Dang. So yeah, I had nightmares for a long time, and I actually hadn't had them for many, many years. It's been 4 years since I've been on a hunting lake. I did have one just the other night.
Mm-hmm.
So they can come back. Avoidance, numbing, feeling detached, avoiding any reminders of the trauma. Duh. Arousal, feeling hyped up or easily startled, sleep problems, anger, and lower functioning, problems with the relationships, work, or other major areas of life. I had all of that.
Yeah.
And so there's 2 types of PTSD. There's the simple one where it's from like a single incident. Like I heard after Hurricane Ian back in 2022, I heard people talking about having PTSD, like on Facebook and stuff.
Right.
So something like that.
Well, or seeing somebody get killed.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's one single instance.
A car accident.
Right. As opposed to what I imagine is going to be the next one, it's prolonged. Like it's the way you continue to get treated or something like that.
Yep. So complex PTSD from repeated incidents such as domestic violence, ongoing childhood abuse, has a broader range of symptoms, including problems with self-harm, which I never had that, suicide, dissociation, relationships, anger, shame, guilt, numbness, loss of faith and trust, feeling damaged. I had all of that.
So I just want to put this out there because it's something that I've learned from watching other YouTube stuff. We cannot say the S word. Can't say it.
Okay.
YouTube will probably pull this down just because of that. So I'll have to go back and edit this out.
Okay.
You say unalive yourself.
Okay.
Because
I was thinking it was the other word.
No.
Okay.
It's that one.
Okay.
Which is a shame because I mean we want to use that word so that we can help people and prevent that from happening. But the algorithm, I don't know whether it's AI that they use now in the algorithm or whatever, But if that word is in the video, they'll pull the video down.
I had
and
no
it'll
idea.
count as a strike.
But they'll put other
Yeah,
junk on
ridiculous
there.
stuff on there. I know.
Yeah. All right. So here's some interesting stuff. Now, this is from 2002, and I fully believe that these percentages are higher now, especially after COVID. You know,
Mhm.
there's become an awareness more of mental health in recent years. So I think that these percentages are probably a little bit higher. Rates of PTSD: 61% of men experience trauma during their lives, with 5% developing PTSD. Women, 51% experience trauma and 10% develop PTSD. That seemed really low to me, even for 2002, but I don't know. The good thing about it is, and it even says it in here, the knowledge about PTSD is it's relatively recent, but now we've got 22 years more of studies on it, and I just thought that that was really interesting. The link between PTSD and substance abuse. This is the one that really I was like, wow. First of all, and I had check marked this. You are not alone. People with substance abuse, for people with substance abuse, PTSD is one of the most common dual diagnoses. Among women in treatment for substance abuse, 30 to 59% have current PTSD. And then with men in substance abuse treatment, 11 to 38% have current PTSD. I wonder why it's lower for men. Do you think maybe it's just because they don't go to the doctor?
It could be. So it
I mean,
no, so
it's kind of like a funny ha-ha, but true.
It goes undiagnosed because they don't seek the care.
They don't seek the care, or don't really talk about their feelings too much and want to elaborate. I'm talking about other men, not you, for sure. So many reasons why people with PTSD abuse substances. To access feelings or memories, or the complete opposite, which is kind of what I was doing, to forget. And sometimes to compensate for the pain of PTSD, to commit slow unalive yourself. Yeah. Because they grew up with substance abuse in the family. And that's something that I found out later in my years. People with PTSD and substance abuse tend to abuse the most dangerous substances, cocaine and opiates. And I never got into opiates.
People with PTSD
tend to abuse the most dangerous substances.
I have a very close friend, right, who ended up ODing. We've talked about it a little bit on previous episode, and clearly had PTSD from sexual abuse, and that led to major confusion with his own sexuality, and definitely like any and every kind of drug, and it was opiates that ended up taking him.
Can I explain something to you that this is just personal experience? So this friend, and we're talking about someone who was male.
Yep.
And when you're sexually abused at a young age and you're male, your abuser tends to also be male.
It was.
And so I can tell you and this, I don't know if we'll get to it in here, but we're on the subject. So there's so much confusion because it's wrong. But when you get to a certain age, your body starts reacting. And it's not all, I don't know how to word this. There is some pleasure there. But it's confusing because it's wrong, but your body is reacting to it. And then I know some other adult men that have been through that scenario. And they struggled with, well, am I straight, attracted to females, or am I gay, attracted to males? Because they're so confused because when they were um, abused, they still kind of reacted in a way that maybe, they thought no, 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 but their body was reacting in a positive way.
Well,
And so it's that confusion as they grow older. Well, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to feel.
mm-hmm. Well, and the other part, I would imagine what contributes to the confusion too, and it is the fact that typically it's the male abuser is somebody who's looked up to by that
Yep.
child, right?
Just gonna say that.
Yeah, it's somebody who's looked up to or is in an authoritative position.
And you love them. You have a close, like with me, you have a close relationship with them and you love them, but they did this awful thing. And so you're conflicted.
Yeah. So you know it's wrong, but somebody who had influence over you told you it was okay. And you feel that it's wrong, but yet there's still endorphins and pleasurable feelings that happen no matter who the person is.
Right.
Right. I mean, my friends and I used to have this joke, guy talk. Hey, close your eyes, it all feels the same. And there's some truth to that. Like as vulgar as that sounds, but there's some truth to that.
Personally speaking, with my own experience, I completely agree with that. Until it messes you up, and then you grow up and you have all these problems that arise from it. The relationship between PTSD and substance abuse is complex. Using I can't even say that word. Substances can either increase or decrease the PTSD symptoms. I think it increased mine. What do you think? Did you think that I had PTSD, or you just thought I was like an alcoholic? I mean,
I never put the PTSD tag on it because, like you, until I was diagnosed with having it, it's almost like imposter syndrome. Like, how could I have it? I've never been brave enough to serve the country, witness my friends die on the front lines in combat. Like, I thought that was a title that was reserved for military.
Yeah, or like a major event.
I didn't even look at it like that, really. Well, I guess like if you survived a murder or something like that.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's not something that's talked about a lot. And so when you don't know what you don't know.
So that I don't sound as colossally stupid as that just sounded, I know that you can't survive a murder. But if you're involved in a situation where somebody's murdered and you survived, or you survived a killer, that's what I meant.
Oh,
that sounded really stupid.
You know what? If you hadn't said anything, I think it would have just passed.
Oh no, somebody would have been lighting up the comments like, you're stupid. Please tell me, how do you survive a murder?
You could get brought back to life.
All
right. So why do PTSD and substance abuse occur together? 4 patterns are common, and I fit the bill in all this. PTSD can lead to substance abuse. To overcome the terrible symptoms of PTSD, you may use substances to self-medicate, try to feel better. For example, you may have begun to use alcohol to get sleep at night. On the reverse, substance abuse can lead to PTSD. See, looking back at myself, gosh, actually, I don't know. That might be a little bit of a toss-up. I think, actually, I don't know. Maybe you can help fill me in. Part of me thinks that my PTSD led to alcohol abuse, but then we were drinking all the time and stuff. Not all the time, but that was a part of our lifestyle.
Oh no,
and
it was like, yeah. So not all the time. Like you ended up in that position where you went literally all the time, right? But it was 3-4 nights a week.
Yeah.
Because we'd be out at bars or, nightclubs.
Yeah.
I will put it in terms of my friend. and how I witnessed that, knowing him for it's so hard because he passed away so long ago and it just doesn't seem possible. But at
You were
least
30.
yeah, so at least 20 years, right? If not longer.
Mhm.
And because we met as teenagers, I think it was 13. And yeah, well, even younger than that, actually. Even younger than
I
that.
thought so.
Yeah, because we had a mutual friend where we would like go hang out at his house, play in the tree house and stuff like that. And so that actually started much younger when I was probably 9 or 10, maybe even 8.
Okay, so yeah, you knew him for a couple decades.
Yeah. So um I think the substance abuse was one, the town, there was literally nothing to do. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That was it. Like literally, because there was nothing to do. If you did try to do something clean fun, like it used to piss my dad off so bad. We'd go ride dirt bikes and all throughout which is now like a big blossoming town and we can't ride where we used to, but there used to be nothing out there. And so we'd have trails that we could ride for miles, but every once in a while you'd have to get on a street to cross over to the next trail. And we came out one time and there was a cop waiting right there and told us that we better get back and get the bikes out or he's going to arrest us and impound them. And my dad got livid. He always has respect for cops, but he was so pissed off because we were trying to do something clean, family fun, right?
Mhm.
And so, like, even growing up back then, as my friend and I got older, and we were hanging out in a big group, and the thing, there was never any fights unless, like, it was all everybody got along. The- For the group that I always hung out in with him, and we'd be like 20, 30 deep sometimes. And there's nerds and preps and jocks, probably not as many of the jocks, but just so many different groups. And because it's such a small town, everybody knows each other. So we'd be hanging out in Twisty Treat parking lot, skateboarding, you know, and cops roll up and kick you out. So what do you want us to do?
Right. Go to a basement.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have basements here.
No,
in
you're
Florida,
wet if you're in a
but-
basement in Florida. So I think substance abuse started as a way to fit in. There was literally nothing to do. That's what the cool kids were doing, which it's ridiculous, and we're gonna have to fight that at some point with our son.
I know.
And but then as he got older, like you, it was numb. It was to be numb.
Well, it actually, so it has here. So abuse can lead to PTSD, and it gives a example. So if you abuse substances, you may be vulnerable to dangerous situations, like you're in a bar and then you go home with a stranger and something happens to you. So that didn't happen to me. My abuse started way earlier.
I wonder if the substance abuse though can lead to, because you know how substance use brings your guard down, makes you lose your inhibitions.
Right.
I wonder if it can actually pull down the curtains that you've put up in your memory so that you shut that stuff up.
Absolutely.
I wonder if substance abuse, especially at a high level, can actually trigger you into having the thoughts that you had shut out. And that's why it changes from having fun or doing it to fit in with the cool kids. And I just opened up Pandora's box in my mind, and now I need to be numb from what I'm thinking and remembering.
Well, how many times did you see me go from like 0 to 100? But yeah, I would completely agree with that. PTSD and substance abuse can be connected in a downward spiral. PTSD can lead you to use substances. By using substances, you are at increased risk for more trauma. It's like a vicious cycle. And so, this was my first aha, because that's the thing. And I know I've mentioned it before, you can go and try to get, treatment. And there were, when I was at Honey Lake, there was this one person, it was their 7th time. in rehab. And I told myself when I was there, I'm like, this is my one and done. I'm not, there were so many different factors, and there were reasons why I went to begin with, but more reasons on why to be sober kept on piling up while I was there, just to make me want to just stay sober. One of them was our church. They invested, and the ministry invested so much. I'm like, I'm not going to let these people down. So I kind of forgot my point with that, but
see if this helps. So
yeah.
I'm gonna kind of like lighten up so I'm not joking about the importance of it or the severity of it or anything like that. But this always reminds me what you started to talk about with the vicious cycle. It reminds me of a scene in Austin Powers with Fat Bastard when he says I'm fat because I eat and I eat because I'm fat. but there's truth to that, right?
There is.
So that's your vice.
So okay, I remember where I was going.
See, I knew that would work.
So you can go to rehab and everything, but unless you really get to the root problem, I don't think, personally, at least for me, I don't think that you're ever going to have a really great chance of staying sober, because life is going to come at you, and it's going to come at you hard. And if you don't have the tools and the understanding of why you did things and how to approach and work through things better, you're just a target for yourself. As far as, because for me, bars are everywhere, liquor is everywhere. I'm going to tell you something that kind of, so at a place of employment recently this week, there was a bucket of little, what are those, fireballs, those little fireballs that an employee brought in for, if you have a stressful time, just go to the F it bucket, and it's sitting there on the counter.
Yeah, that's
when I walk into work.
Not a good environment.
But I'm strong enough. I'm like, I just laughed it off and whatnot. But Amanda, 4 years ago, maybe even 3 years ago,
the bucket would have been empty the first day.
Would have been empty. Yeah. Or a couple of those bottles would have, mysteriously disappeared and everything. But, I've learned how to work through all of that stuff. It doesn't bother me. Seeing alcohol around doesn't bother me.
Well, so I have another friend who, because I've mentioned this before, that I'll just I'll come out and say it. I have said previously that there's no way that outpatient can work for somebody.
Oh yeah, you've said that.
Okay. And the basis for that is my friend that we've been talking about, because he was supposedly in an outpatient treatment facility, but I knew how he operated. Like, I mean, it wasn't doing anything. Somebody with the severity of the abuse, the substance abuse, it needed to be like locked up in a place to get clean, right? Unfortunately, we didn't know about Honey Lake and stuff like that back then. And then one of my other friends set me straight and said that it absolutely can be done. And again, everybody's different, right? So this person actually went to AA meetings by himself and went through the process by himself, kind of quit. I think he fell off the wagon once, right? He had quit cold turkey, fell off the wagon once, but now is like years and years sober. So he set me straight, and I need to be objective and open-minded to the fact that yes, people are made differently. They can just quit cold turkey. I mean, I can even kind of look at myself. The only thing I've ever really been addicted to substance-wise was cigarettes, right? And then when our son was born, I just quit. Now, I did use vaping, which was really new at the time.
Yeah.
I used vaping to help me get over that. And then I think we got drunk a couple of times in the next 2 or 3 years after he was born, and we had, I may have
Yeah,
had like 2 or 3 cigarettes over that time, but realistically, I haven't had a cigarette in 10 years.
that's great.
So, so I have to look within that I was able to do it just cold turkey because I had the willpower to do it. So yes, even an alcoholic, if they're built that way, I guess. Clearly this is
I think it's
a
like a case by
layman.
case
Yeah.
basis.
But
And I
clearly
think it
this is a
also,
layman talking about it. And that friend was able to just quit through the help of AA and things like that.
well, I think it depends on the treatment too.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to have, like, I can't say it any other way, half-ass treatment, you
Yeah.
know, I don't think
Well,
that's going to help either.
half-ass treatment or half-ass try.
Both.
I mean,
Both.
just like we talked about, we had an amazing guest on here a few episodes ago, and the first time wasn't really her decision, so it
Right.
didn't work.
Yeah.
Right. So
I think she may be watching. All right. So long-term PTSD problems. So these are some things that I had crossed off. So your sense of self, helplessness, shame, guilt, self-blame, sense of being damaged. Those were all things that resonated with me. Distorted views of the perpetrator.
knowing what I know about your situation, that's one that is very intriguing and would make a lot of sense if that was the case.
So it says preoccupation with one's relationship with the perpetrator.
Yeah.
Belief that the perpetrator continues to have all the power. Stockholm syndrome, idealizing the perpetrator. No. Sense of a supernatural or fated relationship to the perpetrator. Acceptance of the perpetrator's ideas and beliefs. So I'm not really going to dive into that too much because this next one, actually, I wrote a note. So your sense of meaning, loss of faith, despair, and feeling that you don't have a future. That completely was me. So the despair part of it. Do you remember? And I think you told me this after the fact, years later. I had a family member through marriage that is, not a family member anymore, female.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I would walk into church, actually, this is the despair and loss of faith. Whenever I would walk into church, what did I used to do? I still do it sometimes if a song hits me. I mean, I would cry.
Mm-hmm.
Remember? And like when we were going to get baptized, there's this awesome photo. I'm glad the photographer had captured it, but I am, I kind of like ran into the arms of the pastor, one of the pastors that actually helped get me into Honey Lake.
Yep.
And the photograph is of me just like crying with this look of despair on my face.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I walked into church, it's like the feelings would overwhelm me and I couldn't understand why. And I thought at the time it was because I love God so much. And, but now that I look back, I was shameful.
Yeah.
And I felt guilty.
There you go. So that's what I was looking for, because it was the guilt and the hypocrisy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, were you sober the day you were baptized?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, probably not the day before or not the day after.
I can't even remember,
right?
Actually.
But that's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because you didn't, when did we get baptized? 11?
It was
No.
November the 4th
13?
of 2018.
Oh, was that late? Yeah. No, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, 2018.
So like a whole nother year before you got sober.
Year and a half.
Yeah.
Whole nother year and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's kind of when I was starting to, we had already had problems and stuff, but I was starting to, I don't want to say recognize because I wasn't really recognizing jack diddly squat. But looking back, that's when, the rubber was meeting the road. Did I get that right?
You did.
Awesome. Yay.
Do you know what it means?
Like when push comes to shove?
No.
when you have to pull your bootstraps on and get to work?
Yeah, but you're just using one cliche to explain another. No, all those cliches mean the same thing pretty much. Where the rubber meets the road is a car
hard
term.
work.
It's a car term.
Yeah, it's hard work. Got to get the ball rolling. I don't know.
Hilarious.
Anyway, so your relationships, tendency to be re-victimized, isolation, tendency to repeat problematic relationship patterns. Yeah. My physical well-being, sleep problems, substance abuse, more than average health problems, all these things. So what it says, the probability for long-term PTSD problems, if you have any of this stuff going on, then you might want to evaluate yourself, just take a look at yourself, go to a doctor. So a couple more things. Difficulty speaking, tolerating depression and anxiety. That's another thing. I didn't think I was depressed. I didn't think that I had anxiety. I've always been, even more so now, pretty easygoing person. And actually, I think I'm really at peace. I'm much more at peace than I don't think that I ever really had peace. But when I didn't think I was depressed. And so this past week, not to get off the subject, but this past week has been like a little difficult for me. I'm getting older. It happens with older women, but changing hormones, all that stuff. Am I giving out too much information? I mean, my life's pretty much an open book. So, but a little bit of depression.
Yeah.
But I've recognized it. And obviously I'm not doing the things that I would have done in the past to, try to step myself out of it, which in turn just got me, down the rabbit hole even more. But, I was a little depressed this week just because, hormones and stuff, the hormonies. That's from.
No.
My big fat Greek wedding. Oh. I had a lump, and in it was my twin. It's so funny. I love that movie.
Bon
cake. Anyway, so that's a little bit about PTSD. Does any of that resonate with you? Or let me ask you this question. Does it make sense now a little bit more for you when I was like that 4, 5, 6 years ago? Because you knew what my history was. And at one point you had even said during one of our fights, you're like, and I understand too, you didn't believe me about what had happened to me as a child, but because I had lied so much. But does that make sense?
Well, totally. And PTSD wasn't, like we talked about, PTSD wasn't the tag I would have put on it. Because like I said, I just always felt like that was a military after war kind of term.
Yeah.
But like I had told you a million times, there is something and these were my exact words, there is something so deep-seated in you that you hate certain people when you start drinking. And you need to find out what it is. You're never going to be well.
Yeah. So here's where, again, I think it's a God thing. So that PTSD pamphlet in class was the first thing that really, my first class ever for my recovery, that I really took to heart, because I had gone to Celebrate Recovery, 2 different counselors beforehand. So I learned this on like May 18th, right?
Yep.
May 28th and 29th is when I was at Honey Lake. And I'm so glad that I put the dates on all of these papers, because it's so nice to look back on.
Yeah.
So one thing about guilt. Let's go into guilt.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this is fun, exciting stuff. Um, at Honey Lake, the process groups, they really want you to try to understand why you tick the way you tick. And these are conversations that most people, you don't walk up to your coworker or whatever and like, hey, are you feeling guilty about anything today? Or are you having any shame
Yeah.
about anything? It's like, you don't have those conversations. And really, we never had those conversations as a married couple. It was all very surface level.
Mhm.
Looking back and where we are now, and I think that we can still do such of a better job, and we're a work in progress, right? But we never really talked about our deep-seated stuff. It would come out at bad opportunities, and then, obviously that never really went anywhere. But I was really guilty. I felt guilty because, um, I think maybe you believe me now. I know that I expressed it at points during, arguments and everything before I went to Honey Lake, right after I came back from Honey Lake. But I really did feel guilty for everything that I had done and put you through. And even before that, with the girls and, guilt is a hard thing to work through.
Well,
Um,
and I mean, you still have it. Like
yeah, yeah.
you will accommodate or do things that you, in my opinion, really shouldn't be doing, and it's because you still have some of that.
So I'm going to switch over to one thing real quick. This is self-esteem affirmations that I also got at all this stuff is from Honey Lake, right? Where it says, I have the right to tell others when their behavior annoys me. And there's one in here. I do not have to apologize or give reasons for when I say no. I still, yeah, but here's something. So I had texted a coworker
Mhm.
to let them know I wasn't going to be at work for an upcoming day, and I kind of texted the story of why.
Right, like you're trying to explain it.
And they're like, "It's okay.
Yeah,
See you the next day.
yeah. Thanks
You
for
don't
making me read
you
all
don't
that.
have to you don't have to tell me all that." And I wrote back and I realized it from learning at Honey Lake, and when I came back, I tried to be as transparent with you as possible. And I think that helps me. I mean, before, like when I came back, one of the things that they told us was, you need to earn your trust back, and that's going to take a long time. So be as transparent and open as possible. If you're going to the store, tell, I'm
Mhm.
going to the store, I should be back here. And I still kind of do that. Um, but I just feel like I owe it to explain what I'm doing. And yes, when I say no, I kind of sometimes feel like I need to explain why I'm saying no. And yeah, I still feel guilty about that at times.
Yeah.
So, um, anyway, I have the right to say no without feeling guilty. I need to remember that, obviously.
I think well, I think that comes up with the kids more than anything
It
else.
does. That's
It does,
exactly what I'm thinking.
and not one group over the other, all 3 of them. Like, what I was just talking about, I even see it with our son who we're parenting together, and that's why I say, like, in my opinion, you shouldn't be doing that. Like, he he gets a lot, right? And he's a very, very good kid. Like, we were so blessed
Oh,
with
yeah,
such an amazing child. He's
for
very
sure.
sweet. Very rarely do we have any attitude or anything like that. However, there's times where he needs to be disciplined, or even if it's just be firm and just cut it off. Like, no, no,
Mhm.
like feeling guilty and then babying back into no, just
Yeah.
cut it.
Yeah.
But
All right. So, what is guilt? What's your definition of guilt?
um when you feel bad for doing something that you shouldn't have done in the first place.
Guilt, a feeling of responsibility or remorse for some offense, crime, wrong, etc., whether real or imagined.
I don't have any guilt for robbing all those banks. It's not stuff like that, but
Yeah, not at all. It's the uncomfortable feeling we often experience when we have done something wrong based on a failure of doing and involves a violation of standards. Here's something that that I checkmarked. Where did these standards come from? And I checkmarked that because in parentheses, our family, our experience, our beliefs, peer group, society, media, politics, our own ethics, whatever. So when you feel guilty about violating a standard, whose standards are you violating? And are those standards really the same standards that you have?
Is that a rhetorical question, or are you asking me?
No,
Yeah, so
it's kind of a little bit of both.
Yeah, it is.
What I'm getting at is, sorry, go ahead.
Well, it depends on what it is, right? If it's work related, did I violate some policies that the employer put in place, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's the way I treat other people, did I violate my own moral fiber and that of God's will, right? And what he wants from us? So
see, and I'm thinking of it in a way that might help somebody who feels guilty for the subpar standards of another person. Like if you're in a bad relationship and that other person's standards really are not in line with maybe the higher ethical standard. Like let me just say like an abusive boyfriend. I feel guilt because I didn't have dinner on the table, and now I'm going to be punished. And you feel guilty for something like that, according to their standards. That's a negative way to look at guilt upon yourself.
Yeah, and there's so much of that, right? And
there
it's
is
something I can't even fathom. Because I can't fathom a man that treats a woman like that to begin with,
or even like your
parents, kids or whatever.
Just because they're your parents, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have all their ducks in a row, and as you grow older, you start to realize things for yourself and learn things for yourself. And if you feel guilt because their standards, you're not up to par with their standards, well, it's okay. I mean, you have to be up to par with your own standards. So when you feel guilt for your own moral code, I think that's something completely different.
Yeah.
And boy, did I ever feel guilt. So it is quite normal to feel guilt on occasion because we all make mistakes. It was so crazy because there's actually, and I'm not going to go through all this, there's like 27 questions. And I have to do a much better job. And this is my verbal promise to make sure I put all of these things on our Facebook page. There's 27 suggestions, kind of like questions and stuff too, for you to look at yourself and see if maybe you feel guilty for certain things. I read all of these today. And my answers were not like they were before, obviously. I actually looked at this and I'm like, no. And in my mind, I was thinking, I'm like, this again just tells me how much I'm healing. I've healed and stuff. Give me a number and we'll make this a little bit fun. I'll just say 1. Give me a number between 1 and 10.
5.
No, 5. All right. Clarify new values for yourself and take realistic action in the present instead of dwelling on the past. Think about positive action you can take in your life now to feel better. What can you do to improve things going forward? That's a pretty good one. Yeah. I had a long laundry list of things, back in the day. But enough about guilt. You want to move on to shame?
Sure.
This is exciting stuff. All right. So what is shame? What's your definition?
Sh- Shame is when you feel bad for something that you've done that is embarrassing.
Okay. Is a basic feeling of inferiority. Shame involves the perception of oneself as a failure or feeling unacceptable to others. Shame can involve feeling flawed, unworthy, or not good enough. It often involves forgetting or disregarding the fact that we are human and we make mistakes, but that alone does not make us less of a person. Shame is about self-blame and is directly linked to low self-esteem. I thought that I had high self-esteem back in the day, and I didn't.
No, it was the
It was
alcohol.
just fake.
Oh, it was the
I do
alcohol,
now.
though.
I do
Yeah.
now. But yeah. Irrational thoughts and beliefs can fuel shame and inappropriate guilt. These untruths can perpetuate negative feelings, excuse me, we have about ourselves. We must get everybody, okay, go like this, ding, 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 if you saw any of this in me.
Okay.
Okay. Must get everyone's approval.
Ding.
I must be perfect.
Dang-ish.
Yeah. Mistakes are bad.
I don't think you had any of that.
Yeah. Everyone can see my faults. That's more of like an introspect kind of thing, I think.
Yeah.
I am not worthy of forgiveness. So I would say ding ding to those last two.
Right, but those are feelings inside yourself, like you said.
Yeah.
So
So
it wouldn't be obvious to anybody else.
it has a thing here. If I am not like blank, then I am not a valuable person. And I put, if I'm not like you, I'm not a valuable person.
You put me as the blank?
Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting. So I would say, like, back then, if I am not the life of the party and the, prettiest, sexiest, whatever chick in the room, then whatever the rest of it says.
Then I'm not a valuable person. I would agree with that. See, now I already know that I'm those things. So
That is very true.
And so I'm not really going to, there's a ton of things here where you can kind of talk through shame. What's one thing that comes to mind right now that you are sorry for? Actually, that's a good question. Are you sorry for anything right now? Totally off script. This is the first question I saw. I promise.
I don't even know if it's necessarily regret. So there's a difference between being sorry and being regretful, right? I don't necessarily feel regret for it. I feel more remorse for it and being sorry for the fact that I wasn't there for you when you needed me in Honey Lake. I guess the reason I don't regret it is because, as you've said, it all happened the way that it was supposed to. And if I had been there for you like you thought you needed me to, the whole thing may not have worked.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, I think about that every now and again. I don't dwell on it too much. The what ifs kill you, right? If you dwell too much.
Well, and you can't, like, with our faith and everything too. Like, I don't really get into what ifs too much because I honestly believe that God said no or yes. There's nothing to what if about.
Yeah, but remember though, you have said, you prayed to God and all these signs were telling you not to continue with the marriage and everything. But
yes, but we also know that when you put the word out, there's the Antichrist as well that listens and then tries to dangle carrots in front of your face so that you think that it's God that's answering you and it's not.
Yeah. I think I dwell in that negative moment for a very short amount of time and not very often because I obviously I think about how
Can
yeah.
I'm observing something here.
Oh, okay.
You're trying to make it okay. Like you're trying to minimize me being sorry. Like you're right now it sounds like you're trying to explain yourself or minimize how much you think about that so that I don't feel bad for
No.
being sorry.
No, I'm not.
Okay, that's how it's
No.
sounding.
No, not at all.
Okay.
No, I'm not trying
Okay.
um anyway, I think about it and what you had just said before that,
Mhm.
actually I'm in agreement with because let's just say you did send me excuse me, a card like every week and our conversations were actually really healthier than what they were. I think that I still needed that, there's no other way to say it, like wall that you had
Mhm.
for me sorry, for me to still try to prove that I'm in this when I came back. Because I think if you were too like lovey-dovey lenient with me while I was there, maybe I would have interpreted that a little bit different and I would have fallen back off.
Yeah, well, because you said that you until all that happened, you never thought that I would end things.
Yeah.
And then at some point you realize that that's a distinct possibility and things changed.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm glad and very happy, and I do feel blessed about how everything transpired because you know what? It's so much better now. I mean, I got a beautiful card today for no
Mm.
reason.
No, there was
Cards and
reason.
flowers. And
There was
that's just
reason.
nice.
Mommy's going through emotions that are confusing to everybody, and we just tried to brighten up her day. That's all.
So funny.
There was a reason for it, though.
Yeah, I'm gonna put these right here. Okay, so we're, pretty much to the end of our time, but I do want to. I think this worked out great. I think maybe I'll just say a little bit and it'll be a teaser for next week.
Okay.
But there's so much great stuff in here. I don't even know what to. Do you have any like final thoughts while I find whatever I want to find here?
Not really. I think the PTSD is a big thing that a lot of people don't realize because there's probably a lot of people out there that, like us, felt like that was something that only military
Mm-hmm.
people get, right? And or some kind of severely traumatic experience, whether you survived a car wreck or you were almost murdered or whatever the case may be. Um, However, what it was for me was ongoing stress from a relationship, and I think the ongoing can be worse because you feel like it's never ever going to end.
Yeah. And that's one thing you would always say, you're waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah.
And I hated that.
Yeah, but
I get now where you were coming from, obviously.
you know how many times I had given it another chance,
Mhm.
and at some point because it's just the way that I'm wired. It it's the whole, um fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me,
Mhm.
right? So, um I had been through it multiple times, and yeah. I mean, guard's always going to be up and waiting for that. Now, fortunately, things look great.
It's it's comfortable and freeing, you know.
Hmm.
Okay, so I'll just say this little snippet from Addiction and Grace. There's so many good things in this book, and I only went to like 30 pages. If I can see this with the light. So it talks about denial and repression. During the early stages of the development of chemical addiction, and it is a chemical addiction, We talked about that a little bit before in one of these episodes. The conscious mind studiously ignores or rejects any signs of increasing use of the substance. And boy, did I ever. I was addicted. I needed that chemical. Not only does the person not recognize that the problem exists, this book was written for me, she doesn't want to think about it. She doesn't see any reason even to consider it. This is denial. Evidence for addiction may be perfectly obvious to other people, but it is as if the addicted person is either completely blind to it or always looking in another direction. As evidence mounts, however, the addicted person must use increasing psychological energy to keep the truth out of his awareness. This is the beginning of repression. Somewhere deep inside, the person now recognizes that addiction exists, but she keeps the knowledge unconscious. Not only does this take considerable energy, it also means the person cannot be comfortable with themselves.
Yeah. So, just to make sure that we have given credit where credit is due, that was an excerpt from what book by what author?
Addiction and Grace by Gerald G. May.
Yeah.
Love and Spirituality and Healing of Addictions. So, I mean, this is a really great read. I read it once, but like I told you before we got on the podcast, I only really read what I needed to for some homework stuff I needed to do. But I'm glad that I have it again because a lot of this just makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So anyway, I hope that I hope you had a good time.
Me? Always when I'm with you, babe. All right. Well, that's going to do it for episode 13. Take care of yourself. If you need somebody to talk to, please reach out to us. If there's somebody closer to you, obviously, that you can talk to comfortably, reach out to them. However, we are always here. Like we've said a million times, if you're watching the video, then you know what our faces look like. And because we are realtors, our information is everywhere. So all you have to do is do a quick Google search and you can figure out how to get a hold of us. So that, if you want to stay anonymous, we can just have those conversations in a private way. And then if you do have experiences you want to share with other people, that's one of the things that was awesome is, having Shauna on with her testimony. And what you find when you get on the other side of it is you can't wait to share your testimony because you want to help people out of the darkness that you were in.
Yeah.
So you can definitely do that in the Facebook group, or the Facebook page comments, or in YouTube comments. And yeah,
we'll see you
in the next one.
14.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for watching.